Welcome to a journey deep into the dark, untamed wilderness where shadows lurk between the trees and the air itself whispers of terror. Tonight, we delve into the unsettling world of the deep woods, a place where the wildness of nature meets the unknown, and where many have encountered things they wish they hadn't. These are no ghost stories, but true accounts from those who have braved the forest and came back with tales that chill the blood. Get comfortable, turn down the lights, and let these frightening stories from the deep woods remind you of what might be waiting in the darkness. Our first story comes from a solo backpacker who decided to hike through a dense forest in the Pacific Northwest. It was supposed to be a weekend of solitude, a break from the busy world, until something in the forest decided to take an interest in him. He had been hiking for hours, the trail growing narrower as he went deeper. That's when he first felt it, eyes watching him from the trees. He chalked it up to nerves, the tricks of isolation. But the feeling never left him. As the sun began to set, the forest seemed to close in. He set up camp quickly, hoping the darkness would ease his paranoia. That night, the noises started. Twigs snapping, soft rustling. It wasn't wildlife, it was too deliberate, too close. Every time he shone his flashlight into the trees, nothing, just the eerie stillness. But the moment he turned it off, the noises returned. On the second night, he heard heavy breathing just outside his tent. He stayed perfectly still, holding his breath, clutching the knife he kept by his side. When he finally worked up the courage to look, there were large footprints circling his campsite in the dirt. He packed up and left at dawn, never looking back. To this day, he wonders who or what was watching him that night in the deep woods. Our second story takes us to a group of friends camping in a secluded forest in the Appalachian Mountains. A spot they thought was perfect, far from civilization, surrounded by towering trees. But they would soon learn that the forest didn't want them there. It started with strange sounds. At first just rustling in the leaves like an animal passing through, but then came a low guttural hum, something not quite human. They joked about it being a bear, but unease crept in. One of the friends, Sarah, swore she saw something move between the trees, a figure. The others dismissed it as her imagination. On the second night, things escalated. Their campfire flickered wildly, as if something was moving around them. And then Sarah screamed. She pointed towards the woods, saying there was a man standing just beyond the firelight. The group turned, but no one was there. They tried to brush it off, but an oppressive feeling weighed on them. At dawn, they packed up to leave, but Sarah and her boyfriend never made it to the car. The group called for them, searched everywhere, but they had vanished. No footprints, no signs of struggle, just gone. The local authorities searched for weeks, but found no trace of them. Some say they were taken by the forest itself, absorbed into the shadows that surround the ancient trees. Those who camp in that area now claim to hear whispers at night calling their names. The third story is one that will make you question what truly inhabits the forest. It comes from a hunter who was tracking deer deep in the forests of Maine. He had always been comfortable in the woods, but this hunt would leave him scarred for life. He had been following a deer's trail for hours, watching the tracks and the disturbed leaves. The forest was silent, unnaturally so. No birds, no wind, just the steady sound of his own footsteps. Then he saw it, a deer standing still about 50 yards away. But something wasn't right. Its posture was strange, rigid, almost as if it was waiting for him. He raised his rifle, but when he looked through the scope, his breath caught in his throat. The deer was staring directly at him. Its eyes were not the dark, blank eyes of an animal. They were human. He froze, unable to move as the deer tilted its head, never breaking eye contact. It felt as though it was studying him, daring him to shoot. He lowered his gun and took a step back. The deer turned slowly and walked away, disappearing into the trees. To this day, the hunter refuses to go back into the forest. He's certain that whatever he saw wasn't an animal. He believes something far older, far more sinister was watching him through that creature's eyes. The final story takes place in the deep forests of Alaska, where a hiker stumbled upon something that should have been long forgotten, a cabin deep in the woods, far off any known trail. He had been hiking for days, looking for adventure when he found it, overgrown and abandoned. Curious, he approached. The door was slightly ajar, creaking as he pushed it open. Inside, it looked as though no one had been there for decades. Dust covered everything. Old furniture was rotting, and the smell of decay hung in the air. But what truly unnerved him were the markings on the walls, strange symbols carved into the wood, symbols that didn't belong to any language he recognized. He explored cautiously, and that's when he found it. An old journal lying open on the table. It was filled with frantic, scribbled writing about voices in the night, strange visitors who came when the moon was full. The last entry was the most disturbing. "They are here. I can hear them outside. The woods are alive and they want me." Just as he closed the journal, he heard a noise outside. Heavy footsteps. He looked out the cracked window and saw shadows moving between the trees, circling the cabin. Panic set in. He grabbed the journal and ran, not stopping until he was out of the woods. When he made it back to civilization, he showed the journal to authorities, but the cabin was never found again. The forest had swallowed it, and whatever was lurking there had disappeared with it. These stories remind us that the woods are more than just trees and wildlife. There are places where the natural world overlaps with something else, something older, darker, and far more terrifying than we can comprehend. So, the next time you find yourself in the deep woods, remember, the forest has eyes, and you might not be the only one out there. Sleep well, if you can. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more tales from the unknown. Until next time, stay safe and stay out of the shadows.